Our love to Souls-like games is very well known in this community. Today's game is perfect example of what we love. Moonscars is a Souls-like title in which you will play as Grey Irma on a quest to reach the sculptor, a sort of god to the realm you're in. Throughout the review I will try to focus on the negatives first, as they are pretty substantial, and will be the deciding factor whether you like Moonscars or not. I'd suggest you try to get through them before you make a final judgment. But know this, out the other side you will either love or hate Moonscars. The story in Moonscars is complex. Told in typical Souls-like fashion, you often have to decipher riddles in order to truly understand what is occurring in the world and what Grey Irma's quest is. That said, also it's a very complex storyline to decipher. It becomes more accessible due to the amount of dialogues meant to help you understand what is really happening. Now, I'm not going to say I particularly like this aspect of Moonscars. I prefer my stories being told directly to me, but one thing I did like about the game was its world and setting. The dark medieval world paired with the unique story really fits in perfectly with the Souls-like genre, and I'm sure that any fan of that sort of storytelling will be smitten by it. This relatively short title, around 10 hours by the time I reached the end credit, but makes you exploring the entire world and fighting numerous bosses that seek to stop you in your tracks. In typical Souls-like fashion, Moonscar's only job is to make your life a living hell as you try to reach the ending, and it does so with surprisingly fun gameplay. You'll fight through enemies with 6 abilities: your basic attack, secondary attack, 2 witch abilities from a wide selection, a dodge and a parry. Using a combination of all 6, you'll need to fight through increasingly tricky foes to reach your destination. Moonscars slowly introduces new strength and mandatory playstyle to progress, a system I both liked and disliked. Fighting in the game is incredibly fun, with numerous approaches you can take. There are several secondary weapons you can wield that will work as a melee spell you can use against your foes, though this is a temporary weapon that goes away once you rest at the mirror, the save point. Once you've gone through, you'll have to fight a doppelganger version of yourself in order to retrieve the capability to wield your secondary item, which was fun but became boring as Irma didn't have the most in-depth set of skills to fight. Don't get me wrong, I understand that the doppelganger can be an accidentally difficult foe, otherwise resting would be far more of a burden than it already is, but it was still a system that grew old despite its fun original concept. As you reach the later areas in the game, you're introduced to enemies with resistance to physical attacks, which discourages a melee-only playstyle in exchange for a hybrid caster one, and also I did enjoy having a reason to use my skills. It trivialized using the weapons entirely. While usually play brutish tanks that can handle any blow and barely rely on spells, Moonscars forced me out of my comfort zone, but it did so too strictly and trivialized more than half of Irma's kit overall. What was once a combination of using witch attacks to take out flying foes, your 2 melee weapons to fight ground enemies, and dodge a parry as defensive tools become me trying to parry foes and then immediately casting a spell, repeating that process throughout eternity. The game seemingly punishes you for everything you do, and it can become a taxing experience when you aren't adept at the game enough to hold your own. When you die, the moon gets hungry and foes grow stronger, having more damage and HP than usual, but they drop more bonus, your experience and currency throughout the game. This trade-off is meant to help you unlock more skills, and also I never struggled with the moon mechanics myself. It's stupidly punishing to those that are less skilled at the game. Moonscars also punishes you for wanting to stick to one secondary weapon, as 2 of your 3 choices will either increase your ER or your HP, but the one you had before you rested in the mirror will have no benefit. worth it. After receiving the hammer for the quintillionth time in the HP slot, I decided to stop trying to use the secondary weapon and stick to my normal kit. Another thing Moonscars punishes by forcing me into a sorcery playstyle late into the game. All of the bosses have a simple attack pattern of a couple of hits that you can learn and use to your advantage, but their design is some of the best I've ever played in my recent times. Each new boss fight was exhilarating and I was genuinely excited to get to the next one. Exploration in this title is relatively simple and there aren't any things that were hidden that felt impossible to find. Also, admittedly, I did not find every upgrade there was to get. That said, despite the simplicity of the exploration, Moonscars makes it enjoyable by having breathtaking graphics and an incredibly satisfying sound design that amalgamates expertly with the game. The music in the areas and boss fights was definitely a plus and helped against getting tired of exploring the same area due to an intuitive map system. The game's Souls-like elements don't come into play until the final two areas, but once they do, they really test your mettle. If you're up for the challenge and have the patience to experience it, Moonscars is an excellent entry to the genre but far too punishing for newcomers and those that don't have the patience to arduously train every battle. When it's hard, it's demanding but satisfying, making Moonscars a great title and one that I'll remember fondly. Overall, as for this genre, this game is worth playing, you will not be disappointed and it is very well polished. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one.